have got a plan of a piece of work that I'm going to make through this project. So I'd like to be able to come to a few more of the workshops and just sit there and do that. So what I'm making is a blanket with words in it. It's the wording that's on the pylon at Patcham that's a welcome.
So we're hoping to have a workshop at the Bevy.
Sounds fantastic.
And hoping to have a workshop at the Whitehawk Inn.
Where was the second one, the Bevy?
Bevy, the Bevy
Great.
Community Pub.
Yeah. I've known Brighton for years. I used to come here as a punk, tiny weeny punk. And when it was a little bit more scruffy than it is now and a little bit more down at hill, but it has the same thing then as it has now, which is it is more free.
I always think in Brighton, if you walk down the street, you could be wearing almost anything and nobody will really bat an eyelid. And you notice it when you leave. We used to take our strange Brightonish children off to other places and suddenly everyone was looking at us. Like, why is everyone looking at us? We're just walking about like we normally do. And we're so boring in Brighton. No.
And for example, around here there's a gnome that walks up and down the road, and I think that he may be that he does that. That's his. That's what he likes to do, or it may be that he does it for children's parties. But occasionally he gets a second look, but not often.
It's an unusual town. It has a tradition of tolerance or acceptance. Lots of people fled London and came to Brighton because we felt accepted here. It was much less stressful. It was quite a shabby town in those days, and that's why so many of us with no income were able to come.
I wish it was less expensive, and I wish that people who rock up here could stay, and some of them can't anymore, and they used to be able to.
The problem is that because of house prices being so high, the people who come here have to have a lot of money, and therefore they have to work damn hard to keep jobs, and you know, it's a pretty cutthroat world, it seems to me now, on the job front. It's impossible for the young. It's particularly upsetting that, of course, migrants can't live here. I mean, as well as being a place that's created by people, it's also prime real estate territory for those who want to make a lot of money out of places that, you know, are communities.
I work with refugees, but I largely work with unaccompanied minors. And the one thing that has kind of stuck out from working with unaccompanied minors in different areas, like the ones in Brighton, have felt more welcomed and accepted in the city.
I work with quite a lot of people who have arrived here as refugees over the last 15 years, you know, in different waves. And I know it's been difficult for them to feel accepted, but also it's been wonderful, that process, and a lot of people have worked really hard.
One of the young men I've been working with recently finds Brighton really interesting because there are so many visibly Muslim young people in the street, like young women with their scarves, very confident. I met him through the Migrant English project, where I work on a Monday as a volunteer. The Migrant English Project is an amazing place where people can come and no questions are asked. Anyone can come and just be themselves, and I do think it's a kind of microcosm of how you might like the whole town to be, and in many ways the town can be like that.
Project's called Make It Happen, which is a name that we decided because we felt that it was a play on the words make art, make it, and also make something happen. So there's always a lot of talk about we're going to do things and things should be like this, and and sometimes it's really important to think we are actually going to do it. So Make It Happen comes out of a collaboration between the Hummingbird Project and the University of Brighton Community University Partnership Programme.
We came together and decided that we wanted to do a project that would get people talking and about refugees, what the situation is, because I guess from running the Hummingbird Project, what I've found is that people don't actually know how bad it is, and how much repression and also aggression there is towards refugees, migrants, immigrants. So we wanted to create a project that would raise awareness whilst using the arts to communicate, and also to help make our city an even more welcoming place to be.
I think it's about making a space for people to have conversations about migration and home and safety, and using art as a way to make that happen. So the art isn't really the thing, the product isn't really the thing, it's the process of sitting in a group of people and creating something and thinking about the question of what is home? How do you make a place welcoming and safe? What do people need when they have to move from one place to another? What's that like?
The idea behind this was to get a conversation going about what homes mean to people. And, lots of people have kind of been like, well, refugees shouldn't be entitled to more than anybody else. They should get the same. And it was a chance to kind of explore that, because what we know is that refugees don't get the same as everyone else, and they don't have the same rights. They don't get the same homes. They don't get the same choices. They don't have the income to get homes that we can maybe afford because we're able to work.
It's generated discussions about how far the border and the hostile environment, how far that environment and that border have infiltrated the intimacies of people's lives and relationships. It's very easy to believe you're powerless if you are on your own. So discussions which are generated between people create a sense of power, confidence and optimism, that it's not just you who feels that this is wrong, it's also many other people know that this is wrong and will stand together in saying it.
It's about making art, but it's also about the important conversations that's come out of this, and sometimes just exploring different views, because we understand that the way to make change isn't necessarily about saying, no, this is my opinion and this is your opinion, and kind of fighting it out. Things can be done much more softer than that, and that's a way to create discussion in a kind of non-confrontational way, and art is the perfect tool to do that.
We've used pictures of Brighton housing and looked at images of Calais and put them together montage style, and created some really quite shocking pieces of work, actually, when you juxtapose a for sale sign with a evicted space in Calais. They are quite shocking images.
They've been doing lovely things with estate agents advertising. So they've been talking in groups about home and what does home mean, and putting those words on top of images of houses, and reflecting on the fact that houses are so expensive in Brighton and how difficult that makes it for people to get somewhere secure, and also thinking about the jungle and the refugee camps and what it's like to live there.
There's been a lot of collage, painting, a lot of text.
But also, people have been invited to be involved in Danny Iron's Rebel Yarns project, which has been amazing and quite a different pace to it. So crocheting and knitting, it's a very slow and steady and relaxing form. But in fact, the poem that she's producing is quite relevant, I suppose, relevant for our projects.
Well, I'm crocheting letters. Each one takes me about 20 minutes, probably. And I've got to make 150 of them. And they're going to be arranged in a spiral around within the blanket. And then in between, there are going to be squares made by other people. I'm saying to people, make me a square 10 by 10 centimetres, any fabric, any colour, any pattern, and I'll see how many I've got, and then I will put them all together. So these words are carved on the concrete pylons on the A23 as people arrive in Brighton. And I didn't know about it for ages. Lots of people don't. You can't stop and read it as you come in, because if you're driving in your car. So part of what I wanted to do was just to kind of popularise this and say, this belongs to Brighton. Look, we've got it written on our thing. And I just think it's a lovely sentiment.
We did a workshop at Jacob's house, which was fantastic. In a way, you know, Jacob really embodies making home for refugees. He has people staying in his house at all times. I mean, not many people would do that. Admittedly, he's got a very big front room, but nevertheless, to have 2 or 3 people staying in your own home is pretty phenomenal.
You know, we say we're a full country, we can't accept any more, and we say that we haven't got enough houses to house the homeless and the people in need, and yet we have huge buildings and thousands of houses that are unoccupied.
In Brighton, we've had this important debate about how welcoming we are, and people have these slogans, refugees welcome, but the reality is we've accepted really, really very few refugees of the current, you know, huge numbers, millions of displaced people. I mean, like a handful. And we've had some unaccompanied minors, minors who will come from Calais through to Kent, and Kent social services can't cope with them, and so there'll be some unaccompanied minors that end up from one social services into another bordering kind of locality. So what we thought we'd do is try and keep that debate alive about trying to allow, permit, enable more people to stay in Brighton, because Brighton's free and friendly, and because it's such a really lovely place. We ought to be more open, but the debate has gone, we can't take more people because our house prices are too expensive. That is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's like saying, we're so rich here, we're so rich, we can't help the very, 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 very poorest people. So there's this real deep contradiction between how welcoming and free Brighton is and how actually expensive it is to live. That means that environment can't be created for the people that most need it.
Colonisation, immigration, it's what has made Britain what it is. The bizarre thing is that children are not taught this in school. So that's why people seeing war and migration and famine and large numbers of human beings moving their way across the globe into Europe, they can't see the context because they've never been taught it. Well, I would say, really, we owe it to one another to educate ourselves about this, about why this is happening.
Right now, one of the acute injustices is to do with the treatment of refugees, as if they are somehow a problem, rather than there is a problem which they are the victims of, that they're the problem. You know, so that's really, you know, so there's a sense in which somehow or other, if somebody's lost their home through war, they have less rights, which is so wrong. It's so wrong. And the contradictions of that are amazing. It's as if rights only reside in people who don't really need them, because then we don't have to exercise them because people are wealthy enough to kind of sort themselves out. But rights are, and they are, as you know, in the document we're supposed to refer to, kind of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, they were generated exactly in a moment like this, after the Second World War, when there were huge numbers of displaced people. So the rights that we think belong mostly to the wealthy actually really, really belong to precisely those people that we're trying to keep away from our borders.
I think that's one of the things that's most horrifying about the way Europe has responded to this migrant crisis in the last few years, is that people have put themselves in such danger, travelled so courageously across the world, and found themselves somewhere where people are living in safety and they can't find it. You know, we're all sitting here in our houses, taking our safety for granted, not having bombs falling on us, and we can't be bothered to offer people just, you know, a little bit of security.